Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's session. Just to confirm, we are covering safe documentation, and we're also looking at AI risk management in primary care. As you know, especially as a first contact with patients and as admin staff, you will often be the one having to manage patient information, and it's really important about how we manage this. So today's session, we have Dr. Jay Verma, who will introduce himself, and he's going to be discussing this at length with you. If you have any questions, you're welcome to turn your camera on and speak, unmute, or you can write. If you're a bit shy, you can put it into chat. But the more you engage, the more interesting the session will be, especially as it's after lunch. So thank you. Jay, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Joshini. Can everyone hear me okay? Is that the volume all right? Or
yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So I've just taken the liberty of where you could ask questions quite directly anyway, so either shout it out or type it in, whichever's best. But it'd be great if I could find out what you're hoping to get out today, and I'll give you a brief about my background in a minute. So if you can have a think about it while I go through my background, and then we can go from there. So my name's Dr. Jay Verma. I'm a GP partner and trainer based in Northwest London, and I'm also the clinical director of Smart Life Health. Just briefly about my background. So I'm currently doing a Master's in Data Science, won a few grant awards in researching in the use of AI in primary care, and we'd also led a team that used machine learning algorithms to detect asthma from in the clinical care records. And we've done training and transformation work across about 100 odd practices so far. And so on that basis, what we thought we would want to do out of today's session is just really try to go through what you can get out of this session that's going to be most useful to you. Anyhow, so that's my background. If you have any questions, by all means, fire away. This is the overview, the session overview. So before I get into this, is everyone okay to just drop in the chat what they think they would like? You can either use a Teams chat or you could use the slides.app chat, whichever you prefer. I don't really mind. I'm monitoring both. But just what do you want to get out of today is what I really want to know, and just so I can make sure the learning outcomes are aligned with that. So if you can participate, that'd be really helpful. Otherwise, I swear to God, it's really boring if I'm just talking to myself and viewing myself on screen. So yeah, if you're able to contribute, that'd be very great. Okay, so we've got broader understanding of AI governance requirements. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. So.
And we like cameras on if possible.
Yes, and cameras on as well. Please participate. It's for your own benefit. It's not for me, I promise you. Okay, so fine. So I've only got AI governance, which is rather broad, but I appreciate you adding that in anyhow. So we can probably understand the fundamentals of how AI works and what it can do, and then go from there. So if I go through the core objectives, we are going to cover the governance side of things. So how we implement new programs. Excellent. So thanks, Leela. That's actually a great question. So I do have an example, a worked example we've done with my other hat on at Smart Life Health. So we can cover that for sure. So thanks for contributing on that. So we're going to talk about what is AI. And once you understand how it works and what it can do, you'll appreciate the limitations of it as well. So one of the key areas we really want to do is look at your day-to-day work activity. So what do you do at work? Do you use AI? And so this would be a really good opportunity for everyone to just say, does anyone use AI or not at all? Is anyone using it at the moment? Okay, Javed, you are. Fantastic. Do you mind telling me how you're using it and what do you use it for?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. We don't currently use it, but we are going to be using it in the next month or so. We're going to be using Emma, the virtual AI receptionist.
Emma? Yeah.
The telephone call handling one. So we will be using that to help with triaging.
Okay, that's fair. So as a practice, but I mean, what about you as an individual? Do you?
I use it all the time.
You use it all the time. So tell me more.
Yeah, ChatGPT is my best friend.
He's your best friend. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me more. Why?
Because I can say really dumb things to it, and it can explain it to me in a more professional manner, or like rewording things, or if I can't understand anything, he explains it to me like I'm a child. Yeah.
Got it. Understood. That's fantastic. Thanks, Java. Thanks for volunteering. Anyone else using AI at the moment, or? And we're going to touch on Emma as an AI receptionist as well in a minute, Java. But that'd be really good to get your take on it, what your thoughts are, and your practice take is on it. So, of course, articulate the core principles, identify the risks and how you document it, understanding the AI tools used and the limitations, and understanding governance and respond to scenarios. So the modern primary care landscape, you've got such increased complexities where GPs are managing over 50 to 70 contacts per day, whether it's face-to-face, telephone, online, or asynchronous modalities like emails or e-consults and whatnot. And each generates a record entry that must be accurately, timely entered. And I'm really focusing more from the GMC's good medical practice, where you explicitly required to document accurately, legibly, and it must be contemporaneous. Contemporaneous is one area I really want to touch on with AI, because you'll see reams and reams of information on how AI would work. So how does it think and how does it generate information? And of course, it can say things that may not be appropriate and may not have been said as well, which we'll also talk about as some of the risks like hallucinations. NHS England, of course, have given a drive of NHS England's digital transformation agenda, where they're introducing AI scribes and AI assisted triage as well. And we're talking about how Emma is possibly might be working across there. So let's talk, before we get into it, let's talk about the fundamentals. What is AI? So can someone tell me what is AI? I can guess there are no stupid answers, by the way. There are only stupid questions if you don't really apply it in the right frame. But sorry, I said that wrong. I said there are no stupid questions and there are no stupid answers, just the way you frame it. So just ask, well, what is AI? How do you, when you think of AI or when you hear AI, what do you understand by it?
They're sort of large language models that aggregate information and can therefore produce kind of fairly logical outcomes based on like processing that huge amount of information.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. That's brilliant. And going on to that, let me just talk about the concept about how we think in AI, and this is taken from a marketing research analysis, where they say that the AI in healthcare market is looking to increase to 190 billion by 2030. And we've already heard from Javed earlier on that they already think of using Emma AI in the practice flow, and this is only going to compound year on year. But going back about your earlier point, like what is AI? So we know it's significant and it's growing, but what is it? And as you correctly mentioned, I think it was Lilo, was it? Lilo, was that you yourself?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. And thanks for bringing that up. And that's brilliant. So AI, does anyone know how long AI has been around for? Brownie points for those who can guess it. And ballpark, I just need it to the nearest 10th or nearest decade is good enough for me. I don't need it by the exact year. But anyone have an idea? 3 years, okay. Anyone else? 5 years, okay.
10 years.
Sorry, what's that?
10.
10 years, Javed. Okay. Anyone else? Would you believe me if I tell you it's been around since the 1950s? And it was actually earlier principle. So when AI was said, as you know, machines follow a principle of if this, do that. And based on that logic, they thought, well, could machines effectively do a lot more? So the concept of AI has been around since the 1950s. It's only more recently it's taken off. And so people are adding in the last 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Do you know why that is? Do you know why you think it's only in the last recent or within the last decade? Computing process, but absolutely spot on, 100%, and spot on, Lilo. That's one of the key areas. So there are 4 key areas, actually. So when I was researching using machine learning algorithms, that would have been back 2017, time, we were looking at understanding machine learning, which is a subset of AI. And there are within machine learning, there are 3 key parts. There's supervised machine learning, there's unsupervised machine learning, and there's a way of regenerative, as in feedback loops you can have. So reinforcement learning is what we call it. And within machine learning, there's a subset called deep learning, which is really based on neural networks. And back in 2017, when I was doing the research project on asthma using machine learning algorithms to find asthma patients in the electronic healthcare record, it was starting to emerge. And that's roughly around the time that the paper published Attention is All You Need by Google. And Nikki Palmer, who was incredibly forward thinking at a time, thought about how you have the transformers who can generate new approaches and new knowledge, if you like, or generate new knowledge, I should say. And it's all based on the architecture. So what you really need is, Leela's already mentioned, you need the computing power. That's true. So we started using GPUs as opposed to CPUs, which how your computers normally run. So we're using graphic processing units, and then Google came out with their own TPU, tensor processing units as well. But most people are using GPUs for this. And it's also about data. You've got so much data available that you can now train these models to think differently. So Javed, you were saying earlier that you can ask stupid questions to ChatGPT or illogical questions and it will sort itself out. But how does it sort itself out? And that's what we're going to talk about in a minute. So if you think about the types of different AI, and don't worry about taking notes, I'll be passing over the slides to yourself anyway through Belmat. So at the moment, we've really just hit the tip of the iceberg here with narrow AI, where you can ask it a specific task and it will do it. And these are classically AI scribes, diagnostic image analysis, chatbots, triage tools, and so forth. And we're very far away from getting super AI, which is effectively where it is cognizant to its own well-being or its own health being, if you like. But as we're approaching it, we're starting to realize how it can really improve. Is anyone familiar with Polanyi's paradox? Has anyone heard of Polanyi's paradox? No? Okay, I'm going to pick on people now because those that have been quiet. So is it Martin or Hope Martin?
Sorry?
Hope? I'm going to pick on random people now
It's
just
all
to get
right.
you involved.
Not bad.
So,
Not as
Hope,
snowy as it. No, it's not. For me, it's not snowy as it was as we. Yeah, it's all right.
Sorry, I didn't get that. Could you say that again?
Oh, maybe it's snowing up there though. Looks a bit cloudy up there.
Are we talking about the same thing? Am I hearing the right thing? Or so I was saying that, has anyone heard of Polanyi's paradox? So when we do an activity, so is it
No.
Hope, do you want to take a shot? So when you describe a task you did today without thinking about it. So have you done something today that you didn't need to think about it, but you did
Yeah,
it
like making
anyway?
a cup of tea.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Making a cup of tea. Right, let's go with that. So let's go with the tea. So if I were to ask you, can you write down step by step how you made that cup of tea? Could you do that?
Yep.
Go for it.
I filled the kettle. I picked up the kettle, filled the kettle with water from the tap, put the kettle back on its station, turned it on, took a cup from the mug, from the cupboard, put a tea bag in the cup, filled it with the hot water once it finished boiling, stirred it around a bit with a spoon from the drawer, went to the fridge, got a bottle of milk, poured the milk into the tea, put the milk back in the fridge, then used a spoon to get the tea bag out of the tea and ensure it was the right colour.
Perfect. Excellent. Well done. Now, in that process, did you think about sugar?
No, because I don't like sugar.
No, you don't like sugar. And did you think about walking into the kitchen?
No.
I assume your kettle's in the kitchen.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
It's
Okay.
quite hard to break down these like fairly simple things, isn't
Thank
it,
you.
into like its component parts.
That is Polanyi's paradox. Polanyi said at the time that we can, as humans, we can do things, but we can't always describe everything in detail how to do it. And with the supervised machine learning, I had to manage every different type of permutation you could think of for the machine to give me the output I wanted. And in clinical terms, people liked it because it's explainable. You can easily explain it because you can map out the methodology. But like you said, with the tea, when I'm making tea, I don't know everything about how to make a tea. And this is where deep neural networks have really changed and transformed the way we work, because now you don't have to think about it. You can give a ton of unlabeled data to a deep learning model and say, go work it out for me, and it will work it out. for you. And that's where we are with narrow AI. Makes you wonder that if you can already start to do generate new words, so this is part of generative AI, which is a subdomain, if you like, of even deep neural networks, then can you imagine what you can do if you get to super AI? It's quite a transformative change, isn't it, on that side? But thank you for giving that cup of tea. I really like that example, and that was spot on. And so effectively, how does it work? So we input a data. Now, there could be multiple modes. So, so you can either do text, or you could put a picture, you could put a video. So any thoughts as to how can you put a picture into, say, for example, ChatGPT, for example, or any other AI, and it knows what you're talking about? Any thoughts on that, or anyone? I could use Nargis. Nargis, do you want to give it a go? Is Nargis there? No. Okay. Tanya, since you've joined us now anyway, sorry to pick on you. Any thoughts as to how you can put a picture into ChatGPT and it will understand what you're talking about, or it might do anyway? Yeah, okay, definitely. Okay, I would use it to understand the medical terminology to provide service to patients. Okay, so that's slightly different. Actually, in fact, we talk about how we can use clinical letters from secondary care to share that with patients. So just talking about images. So the way it works is that any image is made up of pixels, as you know, and each pixel can be diagrammatically represented as red, blue, green. Red, blue, green have codes to that representation, and it's that representation which it can decipher into what the image is building up. So if I showed you a picture of a cat to anyone and say, is it a cat or not? You'd immediately say, yes, it's a cat. But how? And in a computer, on the other hand, it will break it down by pixels and will recognize that image as that. Does that make sense? Is that all right? Cool. So you have the input. Then, of course, you have the model processing. So you have the large language model, which will then process. And how it works is it's actually quite simple. It works as you have an input layer, you have a middle layer, and then you have the output. And your input is effectively your whatever you're going to give it, or whether it's unlabeled or labeled data sets. And then in your middle layer, what you will actually have is what we call the neural networks. So when an input connects with a middle layer, that relationship is called a neuron, very similar to the brain neuron, but they're not the same, of course, but similar relationship. And when the middle layer then connects with the output, that's also called a neuron. And then when you combine that, that becomes a parameter. And the reason why I'm explaining this is because it really matters what tool you'll use. And as you get more savvy about the different large language models out there, you'll start to realize, I'm going to use this large language model for this work, and I'm going to use that large language model for that work, and I'm going to use this large language model work for documents or policies review, and so forth. And that's how it's effectively working. But if you think about the middle layer, it's the middle layer which gets really complex, because it works on a mathematical principles on regression, which I won't go in detail here for now, but it works on a process of linear regression. And you can effectively put layers and layers of these linear regression elements, and it gets so complicated mathematically, it then churns an output. So as I mentioned to you, if I have one input, one middle layer, and one output, that is a neuron, and that's a parameter. Now, if you wanted to, you've got some models that have hundreds and billions of parameters on there. I think ChatGPT uses something like over 200-300 billion parameters, the lower models, the GPT-3. The 5 is even more crazy. So you can imagine how many parameters it's looking, and so it can calculate these sequences a lot faster than the human brain could, which is why you get the output much more accurately than you can. But you have a problem of overfitting, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the AI generates, it doesn't retrieve. That's the important bit. So unlike traditional Google searches, where you would have, you would type a keyword, it would look as an index of that within the Google repository or web pages, and then find you the information you want. AI, on the other hand, can generate new information based on the syntax, based on the language grammar, and the syntax, it can generate new material for you. And that's the bit of the generation where it's coming here. And the fact that it can now do it in text, you can have images, audio, code, it's become very multimodal in that approach and how it does. And then the output, of course, is returned to the user in real time. Neural networks I've already talked about, so I won't go on too much about this, your input layer, your hidden layer, and your output layer. And so this is what I was calling the deep layer, or the multiple, and you can have multiple of these hidden layers in that to get the information you need. Right, let's see how we're doing for time. I'm going to speed up, aren't I? So let's talk about the limitations and risks and generative AI. So accuracy and reliability, and I think someone had posted in the chat about pictures that you would use it for document references. That's a really good one, of course, to use it. Documents planning and writing and medical terminology, absolutely. So you would want to make sure that whatever it spits out is accurate. How do you know that the model spits out the right thing? Again, I'm going to ask you, is it Rajan? Do you think, have you got thoughts on that, or Tanya? How do you know it's accurate? How do you feel convinced that when you put something into a large language model, the output you get is accurate? Do you check? Okay, that's okay. That's okay. But don't worry, it's okay if you're not too sure. Does anyone else use large language models except Javed? Otherwise, I might have to come back to you, Javed. Provide references with credible sources. Yeah. So how do you know the output you get? So Javed, I'm going to ask you actually, if you don't mind, because I know you said you use ChatGPT. When it spits out some information to you, how are you so convinced that it's accurate?
If it's something that I have very little knowledge of, I'll usually cross-reference it. So I can check like Google or another AI or somewhere else, put the input that he gave, the output that he gave as an input, and see if it matches basically what I asked.
Okay, yeah, that's one way. So how about if you check a second large language model? How are you convinced that even that's accurate?
I don't actually know.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. It's a really valid question.
Yeah.
So one of the areas, are you familiar with the term called RAG?
RAG?
Yeah.
No, I've not heard of that.
Anyone familiar with the term RAG or use RAG?
Red, amber, green to rag something.
Sort of. Yeah, this stands for something else. It stands for retrieval augmentation generation. So effectively, what you want to know is, if you want to know, is it accurate and reliable, use a technology called RAG, although there are some debates about using other things. That's RAG-less. So yeah, Leela, the acronyms are galore, 3-letter acronyms, and there's
unfortunately.
so much overlap. And there's so much overlap. But the idea is, sorry, go.
No, I was going to give an example of a different. So I like to use the Google Notebook AI, which is quite nice because you can put in your own sources. So what I'll often do is like upload, for example, the new contract documents that were sent out by NHS England, the documents that NHS England published on neighbourhoods, all of those sorts of things. And the reason I like Notebook is because, broadly speaking, it will answer your questions based on the documents I've put into it. So it's not, I don't want it to search the whole internet for some sort of weird, vague, generic answer. I just want to be able to interrogate those particular documents. So I upload them and then ask it questions, and it will reference within the document where it found the information. So I like that as a better, personally, as a tool.
That's spot on, and that's effectively that. I'm not sure if Google Notebook do use RAG, but there are other tools that use RAG, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do actually. And effectively, it works on a vector database you have, and you embed these different what we call the vectors within this database, and it will only go to that knowledge base that you have. So you mentioned you would have the contract, you would upload that contract. That contract is your knowledge base.
Yeah.
And it will only look at that knowledge base, and then within that generate material that you ask questions for. And that's the inquiry output that you then get from it. If I share with you a picture of retrieval, you can still see my screen, right? Or is that okay? Okay, so retrieval augmentation generation. So it's just effectively here. So you could see that you as a user, Leela, you might say, I want to interrogate how, what does a neighborhood contract say, for example? And it would then view the knowledge base, which will be your data source, in this case, the large data source, but just imagine it's your contract. And in order to do that, it will then get it will generate a response based on what you've asked. So it's starting to understand what your question you're after, and provided it's within that knowledge base, it would generate that answer. And it's not always perfect because there is an inherent or intrinsic ability for the large language model to confabulate as well. So within that, it could say to you about your neighborhood that, you know, the neighborhood has got to be about 500,000 patients. And you'd say, well, actually, no, it's not. It's whatever, 200,000 or something. But what they then decided to do was reference that knowledge base with that paragraph or the sentence when it generates that response for you, so you know exactly it's accurate. So yeah, absolutely. And I think Google Notebook is pretty good for that. I use something else. Have you come across Perplexity?
Which one do you use?
Yeah, I use Perplexity. So Perplexity is really good in this. So if you imagine, Perplexity trawls the entire web. So we're talking petabytes of data. Petabytes of data, it will trawl through every day looking for information. So let's say ask the question about neighborhoods. So let's say, what does the new NHS England contract on neighborhood says, right? Let's look like that. So now it's trawling through the entire web, and it's pretty fast. So as you can see, it's going through the different, so it knows now to start looking at the government websites relevant to that mention the word neighborhood. And then it references these points. So you can now query that reference source directly yourself. Does that make sense? So whereas in ChatGPT, I think they've only started to do this, but as you can see, it will tell you, you know, what the answer you'd want from that, and then it will reference different, like these are solicitors, a solicitor law firm that's mentioned it, it's picked that out and previous other. Does that sort of make sense, or is that?
It does.
But
do you like
Google
Perplexity better because it lets you? So I suppose Notebook is the only one I found that lets me upload a kind of bank of documents and interrogate just those documents. But do you know of another?
Yeah, I know. You could do the same here as well, Leela. So if you just upload your document of whatever you have, and it would interrogate. So let's say I've got working on the hypertension markdown file. So if I upload this, and I won't talk about markdowns because that's another way. So what is the hypertension guidelines, right? So it's specifically only to this document, right? This hypertension, something like that. Anyway, I've deliberately made some poor grammatical choices. So it's looked at the file title, and then it's just come back saying because of that I can't safely summarize the hypertension management plan, because I know that document doesn't have it. Does that make sense? So
yeah, so that's good. So it is making stuff up because you've given it something and it can't. It's telling you it can't do it. That's quite nice.
Correct. And the reason why I know it can't do it, because I converted the guidelines into the PDF guidelines into a markdown file. A markdown file is is a better structured document source that large language models use. So when you upload a PDF document or a picture or anything like that, or Word document, breaks it down into a markdown format that it can understand, not breaks it down, sorry, it converts it into a markdown format, and then it interrogates the document. Because this document I'd already converted into a markdown file, I know it didn't have anything in there. So I wasn't expecting it to come out with any guidelines. So it was just a point I was trying to make. You can also use those tools, and you can use any. It doesn't matter though, Leela. If you're comfortable with Google, use that. I'm sure Google are pretty good anyway. So I'm sure they've got a really good way of managing it. So that's how the key thing I really wanted to emphasize was the accuracy and reliability. And if you're going to use AI tools, I just want you to be confident that the source of information you're getting is as rich as possible and accurate as possible as well, that you'd want from it. The data and the bias. So you remember that example I was giving about input and deep layer and output. Unfortunately, the bias is sometimes, if you go in linear regression, they work on in the intercept of the y-axis, and that is sometimes labeled as a bias in those terms. And then that compounds to the parameters that it can then analyze the data source. And the reason why that's important is because this is how the model overfits. It gives you inaccurate information. it's telling you things that you're thinking, where are you coming up with this? Because I never even mentioned this, because the model is deliberately trying to overfit in this. So I've got a hand up. Ashwara, is it Ashwara?
Yeah, about the accuracy, right? By using RAG. So how do you confirm that Perplexity is giving the 100% right information? Do you also check in RAG if that's the accurate information that we get from the Perplexity?
So RAG is just a technique in how you do it, in how you retrieve the information from it. So Perplexity, they've got the whole internet, if you like, the whole of the internet. And there'll be other LLMs as well. It's not that I've got so many shares in Perplexity or anything like that. And because they have all that, it will index the different parts you want and display that to you and reference it as well for you. So in a nutshell, Ashwara, the easiest way is, if you've got the document already there, you can upload it and it's pretty accurate in that sense. I will still get you to validate it based on the references it produces, and then you should make that decision as to, yes, I am happy with it. But that's how it would work. So RAG is just a technique, and Perplexity and other companies use that technique to make sure that the evidence you get is reliable. ChatGPT have only started recently doing this. They were a bit slow in doing this, and that's how it would make up, stuff. And you're like, well, I don't know if this is accurate or not in that regard. Does that sort of answer your question?
Yes. But do you mind giving a little demo if the time permits?
Yeah, sure. Ask me
RAG.
away.
I just wanted to know how it works because I work as an admin, and when I search for the medical terminologies, as you said, it might be accurate and not. So I don't want to give any wrong information to the patient. Just wanted to double check if that's right. Just a demo.
No. I'm very happy to. I quite like data science. So I mean, this is one of the reasons why I really got involved in data science. So let me give you a really good example. This is a really good example. So here we go. So you can see my screen, okay? I'm sharing. Is that okay?
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. So the user has a query. Let's break down your question into certain nouns and verbs you might use in your question, right? It then has to retrieve this information, and it's called a retriever, based on your knowledge base. So let's imagine you've got all your medical terminology here. And we've just done this actually not long ago on SNOMED terms. So I want the exact SNOMED term that's relevant for me. And you can put that into a knowledge base, and you use something called MCP server. And you load up that MCP server, and it will have the SNOMED, your data model, if you like. But let's say in this particular instance, you've got your medical terminology aspect, okay? So all your medical terminology is here. That's your knowledge base. What it then does, it breaks it down into these vectors. And these vectors are form of your vector database. So all your medical terminology. So let's say you've got cardiology and you've got hypertension. What does that mean? Or what does ACE? We use acronyms earlier on. So let's say what is RAG, for example, red, amber, green. We want to know in here. It will break them down into chunks there. And then that retriever will then grab that. But in order for it to grab the right thing that you need, it needs to understand your query and the chunks of text with it to then generate that response. And then you get that response coming back to you only from this knowledge base and nothing else. In Perplexity, if I show you a live example, let's say, give me an example, Ashwara. Is it something that you find difficult? Anything in the medical terminology space you were saying earlier on? Ashwara?
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, you must have been on mute. Give me something that you find difficult.
No, I mean just if a patient inquires about the early asthma symptoms, if they have got, if they want to make sure if that's the thing, or if they want to know if they have the issues with breathing or certain stuff, and they want to make sure if that's asthma or kind of stuff. So we just check that. Or if any case, if you want to know the prescription name, if that is the same thing that they're using for asthma sort of thing. So yeah, we just check if I use AI, for example, to check the name of the prescription, if that's the same one they're using for the asthma or sort of thing. So
got it. Okay, so let me That's a really good one. So let's do that. What are the symptoms of asthma, right? So I've deliberately kept it vague. I've not asked it to reference any particular guidelines, but you can see already this is spot on what is churned out. And it's also got the knowledge. So it's decided that it will look at asthma and lung in reference source. It's got a Mayo Clinic, which I could argue is true, and the asthma symptoms as well, NHS. But it's not bothered to look at any of the guidelines, the NICE and the SIGN guidelines. So if I then say, what are the symptoms of asthma as per NICE guidelines, right? Now it's forcing it to recognize that this noun, along with here, is now making sure it's only referencing those sources. And so it's now decided to quote NICE as well on the diagnosis monitoring aspects as well, if that makes sense. And it's decided to only use NICE as well, because it's picked up that user query here as your little chunks and knows that that's what it's going to match when it retrieves the knowledge base, if that makes sense. Does that sort of make sense? Or
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, understood. Yeah.
Cool, but absolutely, you can use it accordingly on that side. There's some of the data bias we've covered. The governance and compliance is all I really want to emphasize with you. So does anyone know about the story of Google DeepMind and the Royal Free Hospital fiasco that happened some years ago? It was in the papers as well. Has anyone heard of that? Or
No, but I'd like to hear it.
Okay, no worries. So part of what had happened was Google had created well, at that time it was DeepMind. So before they got purchased by Google, DeepMind had created an app called Streams. The idea was that the streams will tell clinicians early on when a patient was deteriorating, was likely to develop sepsis. Okay, great tool, fantastic tool. And they went about the governance of the data a bit haphazardly, I'd say. So I had to do an essay in my master's, and in that, what I found that there was an inquiry report then done as to why did it end up so messed up, that even though the technology was amazing, the provenance, i.e. the origin of the data source in how they got it, was absolutely flawed. They had basically decided that anyone who got treated at Royal Free Hospital, or anyone who visited Royal Free Hospital, they would use that data to train Streams. Does that make sense? So they would using that data source to then train an AI, if you like, or an algorithmic portion. We don't know the details of how Streams works because it's proprietary, but they use that data, patient data, to train another thing. So is everyone familiar with the opt-in and opt-out of data? You should be, because you work in general practice. So patients' rights with data. So can we use data for anything? Can we use patient data for anything we like?
No, we need to get a consent from the patient for that.
Correct. Okay, so let me put it another way. Their argument was, these group of consultants who had to argue this, they said the reason why they didn't have to was because it was for direct care. Is everyone familiar with what's direct care and indirect care? Have a guess. Don't worry. I don't care if you get it wrong. I'd rather you ask and get it wrong now with me than in real life.
Is it the difference between these are your patients, i.e. these were all the patients of that hospital and therefore contributing to their care, versus like in a medical trial, for instance, where it you couldn't give that data for a medical trial, but you can do it for your internal use?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, you're on the money on that, actually. So we're saying research is not direct care, because the patient does not benefit anything from it at the outcome. Whereas in direct care, if I don't do this, patient harm will occur, or the patient will not benefit from the treatment. So that's direct care. What Royal Free Hospital had said, or the consultants at the Royal Free Hospital had said, well, actually, they're all in direct care. But that's not true, because when you looked at the provenance of the data, some patients had died beforehand, but they were using the data to train Streams. And some patients had left the hospital or left the area. So they were never going to benefit from the treatment or prevent any harm coming from them. And just because of that simple error in how you've collected data and then used the data, they had to shut down Streams. And it's really sad, because I think that tool would have been really fantastic to use in hospitals. And that's why I would strongly urge you that if you're going to use AI, just be careful with the patient data that's going in there. So anything identifiable, remember, you have no control. Once you drop it in Perplexity, ChatGPT, or any OpenClaw or any other LLM, you have no control about where that data is going to. Most likely it's being shipped off, and it's probably in violation of some aspects of GDPR, I imagine. But most of that patient data might be going into other servers around the world. And that's why just be a bit careful. So the questions you ask, be generic, be safe, and just be wary not to, inadvertently put patient data in that field. But we cover this more a little bit later on. And of course, the clinical safety risks as well associated. So Emma, AI, Javed, you're saying that you're about to deploy it. I would love to know how you're risk assessing it and how are you going to make sure that the patients in your practice are safe when you deploy the tool. And this should be some guidance coming from the manufacturers, i.e. the company that own Emma, but also you should be doing your own due diligence, and I'm sure you are in just how you're going to deploy it and how you're going to mitigate any problems that occur. The human in the loop review for me is the most important thing. And if you can do that well, then I think that'll be safe. And I'm going to use an example later on. We're going to go through document management filing in how we've tried to use human in the loop on that side. Does that make sense so far? I don't want to drag too much on that, and I'm conscious that I'm probably running really severely behind time, but I like it when you're asking questions because it makes it more interactive, and hopefully you're getting the maximum out of this you can. So good. Okay, so let's talk about safe documentation. So trouble patients. If you think about the evolution of the electronic healthcare records back in the 1980s, so actually the late 1970s, when Epic in America had released their electronic healthcare record, and then slowly in the mid 80s, early 80s, other organizations like System One System One didn't come to 2000, but EMIS had emerged, but there were about 200 different owners of electronic healthcare records back in the 80s and 90s. And believe it or not, pharmaceutical companies were also investing in it because they saw the potential of the data at the time. And lo and behold, there's a duopoly now exists between System One and EMIS. Are most practices here EMIS or System One, or anyone? You're all EMIS, or? Yeah, looks like it. Okay, cool. How do you find the system so far, or anyone? How are you finding the system? Any flaws you've noticed, or you think not quite right?
Yep, I've got experience working in both System One and EMIS. I feel EMIS is more structured and easy to navigate when compared to System One. So yeah.
Oh wow, that's really good feedback. Actually, that's really important. I mean, we use EMIS as well, so we were looking at whether we change over to System One, but anyway, but that's another story. But effectively, when
have you looked at Medicus? Are you interested in looking at Medicus?
I have demoed the. So the difference is that I feel like one's just very cloud-based, so they work on a cloud base rather than EMIS, which is a client server base, which is why it's so slow, right? It needs to update, takes forever to update. Whereas if it's all in the cloud, you don't have to wait, and that's the advantage of Medicus. So yeah, we have. I'm still trialing them at the moment, so I'm not sure if I'm going to.
I might speak to you about that separately. We won't get to that right now, but I'd be interested to hear from you about a bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. So I've got the demo environment, so I'm just playing around with the demo environment and just trying to weigh up the pros and cons. But yeah, definitely we can catch up on that, Leela. So a lot of the AI assisted tools. So now you may have heard of AI scribes, and is anyone using any AI scribes at the moment?
We're not really using them consistently, but I really want to try and introduce a consistent approach within our practices. I just need to actually work on evaluating the best tool, and I suppose that's partly what I want to get out of this, is the way to evaluate that.
Perfect. Okay, let's skip to the fun bits then about evaluation of AI tools. Okay, so we will go through that. So you would have heard there's Tortoise, and there's Heidi, and then of course EMIS are about to launch their own partnership with another provider as well. But the key part is about the medical output that comes up. So I've tried some of the various different AI assisted tools, and the challenge has always been is how do you control a large language model to only extract information from that consultation without it generating its own version and without adding any biases into it. And so there's a recent paper got published where they said that someone, when they were looking at the AI scribes, that it tend to omit things related to mental health and sexuality. And we don't know why. I haven't read the full paper yet. But it's like, how do you control that? And so we're going to touch on that actually, and might have to do that. I might pick up speed on that actually. So let's talk about the core principles. So you have the clarity where, it's written in plain, unambiguous language. I have a GP registrar who writes reams and reams of information in the clinical records. And believe it or not, the more information there is, that's also a risk, because there's more likelihood that I'm going to miss something when I'm reading those notes. But if it's too brief or too succinct, I'm also going to miss something as well. So there is a fine balance, and you want to strike the same with the AI scribe tool. How accurate it is, and that's another worth evaluation doing. And this could be subjectively, i.e., if you think about it, you could actually qualitatively get this from clinicians. That how likely are they to use it, and therefore it's qualitative, so it's like a categorical data, do you like it or not, yes or no, 2 outcomes, and you can run a logistic regression on something like that. Is it contemporaneous, and is it like is the attributable quite easy to manage with the person who's used it and how it's structured in the clinical records? I just want to talk about the legal and regulatory expectations, though. So the GMC is very clear about what they say, what makes good, clear, accurate healthcare records, especially for clinicians, so physician associates and GPs. NHS England have the DSPT, the Data Security and Protection Toolkit. You must be familiar that NHS England mandated that all AI scribe tools needs to be a Class 1 medical device. So that means that self-certification with the MHRA to say that they're quite a safe tool, and but that's something to bear in mind. And of course, medically, legally, they've always argued if it isn't recorded, it didn't happen, which is always a tricky situation. Anyway, if your notes don't accept everything that's being discussed into the records, but like I say, too much is also bad. Too less is also equally as bad. So let's say good and unsafe documentation. How do you feel about documenting notes? So I think Ashura, you was talking about a patient. They asked symptoms of asthma, and you were saying that. Talk me through how you document it, and what do you say?
Yeah, I would first listen to them like about their symptoms, what's happening, and then I would ask our on-call doctor if that's that requires an urgent appointment, or that can be that can be handled in a week's time. And based on that, I will suggest the patient to either refer them to the pharmacy if we do not have any appointments, or we'll have them checked with the on-call doctor on the same day, and we'll document the same thing. We'll put everything in the notes that the patient called in and they have got symptoms, and we have checked with the on-call doctor, and whatever the response she gives, and I would document everything on the notes.
Got it. Understood. I'm going to share with you a significant event that happened in our practice, and it was very sad actually. It was very similar to what you've described, and it made me think about our own processes in the GP practice. Basically, a patient had phoned at 4 o'clock, complained of chest pain, and was advised to go to A&E, which was correct. Patient said, no, I'll just wait for the doctor to ring me back. Wasn't recorded in the notes that the patient was advised, but we do know it was said because we have the telephone records. So we record all our calls for learning improvement purposes anyway. But then it made us ask that what if we didn't record the phone calls? What could have been said? It wasn't written, so therefore it didn't occur. Unfortunately, the patient had a heart attack later that evening at about 7 o'clock and died and got pronounced dead at the local hospital. We got a phone call from the coroner's office to say, what happened? Can you talk me through it? Can you share the notes? We did. They said, your notes don't say that you advised him go to A&E straight away. But we said we did, and there was a telephone call record. Long story short, what I was trying to say was, if this wasn't recorded, like chest pain reassured follow-up of worse, whereas a more comprehensive detailed note taking makes a huge difference. So Ashwara, even when you're taking the history and you're speaking to other clinicians, which is great, by the way, it's what do you, and you document, I'm sure you do, that you've spoken to Dr. So-and-so and they suggested to do X, Y, and Z, or?
Yes. I would put that on the notes as well. Whatever the response the doctor gave, I would write that down as well. That doctor has advised this, or doctor said they're gonna call us on the same day, or whatever the response the doctor gives. I would mention that in the documentation to be just on a safer side, because maybe if the patient calls again after 10 minutes, if my colleagues answer the call, they would know what has happened, so they will have a clear idea of how to handle the patient and what best care we can give to the patient. So yeah.
Got it. Understood. And it's worth having a cheat sheet as well. So we have a cheat sheet we give our receptionists. So the cheat sheet is effectively, it's basically quite simple. It's like anyone with A, B, C, D issues, he'll go to urgent or go get diverted to A&E. So anything problems with airway, breathing, circulation, your BLS basically. So B, breathing, anything shortness of breath, wheeze, chest tightness, anything like that will be flagged as urgent in our incoming triage. And if it's chest pain, of course, we'd always advise them to go to A&E. Then as long as you have protocol, it might save you time in asking clinicians. But anyway, that's a workful issue rather than
That's
anything
actually
else.
a great approach. We'll ask a manager to do that for us, our clinic as well.
Yeah, just a simple cheat sheet, and I could share you one we have anyway later on. That's not a problem. Quite
Appreciate it.
easy. No problem. So the common pitfalls, and I think someone dropped in the chat about clear and concise documentation. I totally agree. The problem occurs when there's vague safety netting or you uncheck the copy and paste. So I've seen some of our admin staff and clinicians copy and paste what's being written in ChatGPT into the medical records. And it's so bad because there's a sentence before and a sentence after. It says, "Would you like me to help you with something else?" And then that's also been included in the notes, which doesn't bode well. Because then we know it's just a copy and paste and not being checked properly. So that sometimes becomes an issue. And of course, retrospective entries are fine, but dating it is clearly is good. So just saying when you did it, why you did it, and what you're updating, and any absent attribution as well. So basically, if you didn't have clear authority, just explaining that, saying doctor unavailable, and therefore I did this. So therefore, if something goes wrong, at least we know you tried your best, but the doctor was not available, so this is the action you've taken. And that just shows a streamlined pathway in how you're managing it. Oops, sorry, we're going backwards. So documentation risk. So we talked about the poor records and the decision errors, information gap, and the patient harm. So we'll skip through that. Recording the date and time, the clinical interpretation, and the action taken. The reason why I'm saying all of this is because when you put all of this in the AI, in the ChatGPT or whatever, things like this tends to get missed because the large language models don't know that these are important things. It only knows how to generate content based on what you ask. So there are two ways of doing it. When we talk about the prompt you give the large language model, we call it a zero-shot approach or a few-shot approach. The shot basically means is what's your first prompt. So in a zero-shot approach, I could say, when you summarize the medical notes, please make sure you record the date and time, the clinical interpretation, any actions that were taken, what communication should be given to patients, specify the follow-up plan, and flag urgent findings. If I bundle all of that in one zero shot into the large language model, the output is I will get to all of that. But sometimes that doesn't always happen, which is why we always go back to check the medical notes. And has that been completed or not? And that's the most critical and crucial thing, I would say, in that regard, just to make sure that you always do that. High risk safety netting failures. So, of course, the risk. What does good look like? So vague safety netting, return if worse. What we either say is call 999. So going back to that example I gave about the coroner, what they were saying was that why wasn't it written in the notes that the person had chest pain, was advised was high risk, and therefore was documented. And our argument was, well, actually, to be fair, the call handler is a receptionist. They are not clinically trained. They did the right thing. They escalated it to the clinician. The problem was the clinician also didn't write in the notes as well, as you do. How many clinicians do actually write the notes? So it was more documentation feedback we had, although we had followed the right approach, but it just goes to show that being specific carries a lot more weight than being vague in those instances. Ambiguous wording, we've already talked about, we go on that. Copy and paste, I've already mentioned that. Just trying to be careful about what you copy and paste from the AI generated text, because it can confabulate. Anonymized scenario. So I was thinking that we could go through some scenarios and then see how you go. So here you have a 58-year-old woman, attends with fatigue, blood tests ordered, HbA1c is at 62. The GP reviews the results on system 1 and codes it as seen. Okay. No action entry, no patient contact, no follow-up plan is documented. 6 months later, she attends with polyuria and weight loss. A new HbA1c is 91. She was never informed of her diabetes diagnosis. So let's assume she's had 2 of those on that area. So if I were to scroll back, what do you think could have gone better on that documentation? I've just hidden that slide, so I've gone forward a bit. But so what do you think when you see lab results and it just says seen? Is that, or normal, or, you know, even though it's got a big red exclamation mark saying it's abnormal, how do you handle that? Yeah, Sheba. Yeah, Sheba, do you want to add a bit more about what you've had? But you're spot on, by the way, so really well done. What do you think?
No, I agree. So in this instance, there could have been a high risk of the patient not being followed up. So let's say, for instance, it could have been a fit test or any other results wherein patient may need a follow-up itself. Patient being seen is a bit ambiguous, so clinical understanding of seen may not be the same as, you know, as it should be. So has a clear documentation really in that instance.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think it's also about, as you correctly say, you know, patients can view the results via the app. How many times have you had a phone call where there's a red exclamation mark next to a blood result and the person is written satisfactory or normal? Do you encounter those, or do you get those happening in your practice? Or
Yeah, absolutely. So for the patient
how do you
itself,
handle it? Yeah.
patients itself will come back to the practice inquiry as to, you know, what is expected next. You know, the results, are they within range or not within range itself? But I think it would be clear to give them a guidance, you know, this is normal, it may be above and so forth, but, you know, there's no concerns. So very clear documentation would help them, I would say.
Got it. Yeah, agreed. So if we go back, so what went wrong? Seen is not a clinical action, is it? It's just someone, I've seen it. But what does that mean? What are you going to do next, as you correctly said, Sheba? So well done. Patient impact, of course, is 6 months of unmanaged type 2 diabetes. So especially those abnormal blood results becomes a problem. And what was required was just a documented interpretation. Did you know that if you follow, remember I was talking about the Poloni's paradox? This is one of the things that I've always felt that as, and this is anyone, not just clinicians, that when you document your steps, and I don't expect you all to document your steps to make a cup of tea, by the way, but if you were to document your step, you're less likely to forget what needs to be done, as long as you've got reflection on the previous step to say this should follow after that step. And so you're less likely to make mistakes like that. And this is something I advise some of our GP registrars that come in our practices when they're documenting, is just being that careful. What would you do next is the ask, and imagine the next person is then looking at those records. What would they do? So we're always on the back of our head is, what would a receptionist do if I were to document it's just normal when it's abnormal, well, when the exclamation mark is showing that, and I type satisfactory. So I'll write a brief message that this is nothing to worry about, can happen in most patients, and I'll just observe next year or repeat in 6 months or whatever is that. And then that just helps receptionists then to think, okay, so Jay was thinking that we need to be, it's okay for it to be abnormal, but because in most patients it can be, but we're still going to recheck in whenever time. So think of follow-on actions. Don't think just about yourself. Have I documented it? Think, well, I've documented it. What would be the next step when someone takes over from me and they're dealing with the same patient? Because if it was your mum or dad, I mean, this is not great, right? Or your relative. This is not how you'd want them to be treated. So we shouldn't be treating our patients any differently on that side. Good. Okay, excellent. I'm going to rattle through. One thing I will make sure you have my promise is that you will finish on time today. So I will make sure that all the answers are addressed. But I think it'll be better after the break because it's more interactive quiz and going through some worked examples. So it might be a little bit more practical. So you're not just having to hear me talk all the time, which would be great. So we talked about applying AI in primary healthcare, and this is what I've been doing for the last 6-7 years, really, is looking at this. So as you know, that most GP practices operate across complex ecosystems of digital tools. If I were to ask everyone to have a guess, how many tools do you think you use in your day-to-day work? And you can shout out the numbers, so you don't have to type it in if you don't want to. So guess. Anyone, or start picking on people? I guess. What do you think? How many tools do you use in your day-to-day work? Okay, Shoba, you think you use 10? So can you list them out for me? 25.
Literally just going through the thoughts.
Yeah.
So for us as a practice, we've made highly dependent on using, EMIS itself. It could be utilizing telephony tools, total organization, there's NHS, just trying to list them all, really. I think you're absolutely right in the terms of mapping it out, but maybe about 25.
Yeah, 25.
Yeah,
probably right. I did a workshop with secondary care consultants and asking them in how many tools they use in secondary care. How many tools do you think they said? And we did map it out, actually, and it
You think what, like 3 they would use, and is it less? Have they got a more unified system?
It's worse.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a lot worse.
I mean, organizationally, we use so many different tools. Obviously, EMIS is a big one, but like there are loads of these little ones, like the smear tool to double check when people's last smear one was, the APL searches and like the Pathfinder dashboard and what is it? What's the one that does appointments analysis, Shay?
Apex Edenbridge.
Apex Edenbridge, and like really, it starts to build up quite a lot.
Yeah,
you're probably right. I mean, 25, I don't think you're that far off, probably, because you probably would want to include tools like Word, Excel, your emails, Outlook.
Or even like the the billing stuff for the practice all comes up, or, and there are a couple of different places to put all of our different claims. That's like at least 3 or 4 tools. And then, just loads of weird different submissions. When we buy vaccines and drugs from about 3 different suppliers, there's a lot.
Yeah, you're probably right. No, I agree. 25 is impressive, but probably right. Just to give you in context, I think the hospital worked out 36 in Ealing Hospital, different tools. And each of those 36 tools needed a username and password. And by the way, that's not even including your Windows operating system or Word or Excel. It's just all the different tools they need for their path labs, for their x-rays, for their surgery operating theatre, their own diary management. It's just like, yeah, I don't know how they survive, but there you go. So one of the key things you really have to think about is the knock-on effect. That if you're going to implement an AI tool, is it going to have an impact on the other tools that you're also using? The drive has always been for us to be more efficient and more have free time. The reality is that I don't think you'll ever get free time. What will happen is you'll just have lots and lots of overlays of tools doing what they do, but then overseeing that tool or overseeing other processes. But I don't think that whole fallacy of that it will release you a lot of time, I think is somewhat very subjective, especially when the tools go down. That's not an excuse to say don't use it. I'm just saying that just to be wary that you may not always see it beneficial in that regard. But yeah, absolutely. Online consultation triage tools we've already talked about earlier on as your first part, and then your AI scribe, so and document processing and coding as well. So, but there are benefits of the AI. So I think it can sometimes reduce administrative burden to one degree, might increase it based on the monitoring, but I think largely it might end up reducing your post-consultation documentation time. One of the studies shown that it's gone up to about a median time of about 30 to 40% reduction. It was an American paper they were looking at. I think it was the Mayo Clinic, actually. I can't remember where they used. No, it was Kaiser Permanente. They were looking at all their clinics in America to see does it actually reduce the clinician time in documenting. It's more contemporaneous, but at the same time, be careful. too much is also bad. And also, does it confabulate? So checking it. And what you really want is structured data capture. Sorry, I should have got rid of the read. I don't know why I left the read codes there. Don't really use that much. Everything's mapped over to SNOMED-based code anyhow. And then, of course, any automation that's involved as well. So understanding your workflows would be really critical, Javed, when you employ Emma AI. So have you done that mapping just out of curiosity yet? Or are you yet to do that? Javed, is still there, or you might be gone away? Okay, so the AI failure modes, what can go wrong is hallucination. Of course, we mentioned that, so you get incorrect content. It's important to understand why it hallucinates, and it's not that it's deliberately trying to give you the wrong answers. It ends up overfitting, so it ends up doing too much for you to the point that it gets it wrong, and that's why you're just being bit careful. Omission of text, as I mentioned as well, that if your zero-shot prompt is wrong or incomplete, it will miss things for that you need. Over relying on it, and of course the context also gets lost usually in these regards. And this is a classical example where a GP uses an AI scribe during consultation for knee pain. The patient mentions she takes ibuprofen sometimes. Sometimes is a vague term, and so the AI might struggle to understand what does sometimes mean. So patient on regular end said no GI symptoms, continue current medication. So totally, you missed the point about the regularity and the sometimes in that side, and of course the GP saves the note without reviewing it. So I think just being a bit careful with knowing the limitations is critical on that side. And effectively, the human in the loop principle just helps you to control the content creation process. So you have the AI draft anyway. The clinician would of course review and edit it, and then save and own it as well. So once they save and own it, they've signed off on that, saying this is what I think it is. So I think, I think the only important point to mention here is the regulatory and medical legal position in the UK has just got to be clear. Have you come across patients saying that if you use AI, I don't want you to use AI, and how do you tackle that? Has anyone encountered that yet? Getting consent from patients when you use AI. Has anyone encountered that yet? Or no, not yet. It's coming. Sheba, can you share your experience? So what happened?
Yeah. So I noticed during the practice, we had a trial period in order to utilize AI, and we went through all the governance checks to ensure that patients were informed, and wanted to just get a bit of feedback on, what did patients feel in regards to the AI. So we had a certain percentage of patients were not keen on it because of their perception of how it will be utilized for clinical care, and certain patients were quite pleased to give consent, particularly using, AVT, for example. So a mixture, really, I would say.
I see. Has any patients ever declined using to use AI?
Yes. So it's important to actually get consent beforehand. So I'll be quite keen for, I'm not sure if Javid's still on the line, just to get his point of view as well, because I know that he's using it.
Yeah, understood. And so how have you handled that when you're managing that consent process?
The patients' wishes were respected at that point of time, just to ensure that patients were informed. At the end, I think in some cases, patients may lack the understanding or knowledge, but also needed assurance from the practice to ensure that all our governance are in place if we were to utilize it, so to speak. So transparency is very important in that sense.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. No, that's handled really well. So I think you managed to bypass a lot of the issues there just by the communication and making sure you've done your due diligence. So that's really well done. Yep, spot on. Yeah, we have the issues that whether patients can tell you. So I'm just playing devil's advocate here. If a patient were to say to you, don't use EMIS to record my notes, how would you approach that? I'm deliberately being difficult here, but because I'm trying to make you think about it. What are the limitations of consent in here? So you're absolutely right, by the way. You have to get patient consent for the AI. But if a patient says, I don't want you to use EMIS, and I don't want you to record my telephone calls, and I don't want you to record the consultation, but I need to tell you a clinical issue.
Then we'll be utilising the legal basis in order to utilise it, wouldn't it? So if we're doing it for direct care, it would be an implied consent in that situation. Do correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think you're doing really well. That's why I'm being difficult. So don't keep going.
So as far as I know, but if anyone else can elaborate, please do.
Okay, good. I think Tanya, were you going to say something or no? Okay, anyone else? Okay, Javed.
Could you repeat? What was the question?
Yeah, the question was that if a patient says to you that I don't want you to record my clinical notes in using your using EMIS, how would you approach that?
You can't record it on EMIS.
Yeah.
Oh, bloody hell.
I know you've not had it. And touch wood, you never get
Yeah,
this problem.
I've
either.
never heard of that.
Yeah, and touch wood, you shouldn't. But I'm just being devil's advocate in trying to
Yeah.
test the boundaries of consent and what rights does a patient have to asking for certain things.
Wait, so are you trying to say that we still can or not?
No, I'm asking you is the question. How
Oh.
would you handle it?
I don't know. Good thing I'm not clinical.
That's okay. Well, it doesn't have to be clinical. Let's say it's admin related. Sheba, do you want to?
I think you just touched base on the patient's rights. I just want to touch in on that. You know, if the patient's at risk for rectification or for, you know, ending specific processes, we do need to take that into consideration. But at the end of the day, if it's for their direct care, that's where there's a specific line. You know, we need to respect their wishes, but at the same time, be able to support them within, you know. So yeah, this is an interesting question.
Okay, so the point that I'm trying to get at here is that what is like useful that you need to have, because one could argue that actually, do you need the electronic health record? You could do it paper and base. You can write the medical notes on paper and then keep it. But eventually, the whole point of us migrating from paper to the electronic healthcare record has been that we have data in a structured format and we're able to then provide better care to our patients, right? So it's the same thing with even AI scribes. I think a lot of the concern from our patients anyway has been more about where is the data going. And I think you eloquently mentioned this, Sheba, that if you could possibly have that early communication and engagement and explained that, you know, it's all safe, secure, the governance is fine as well, then that usually abates that concern. And so therefore it makes life easier. So in a way, if a patient were to say, I don't consent to you using EMIS, I would always say, well, actually, I don't think you have a legal, lawful basis to do that. Because I need to do this to maintain direct care for you and record entries to give you safe care. The question becomes with the AI scribe is that it's not there designed to give patients direct care. It's there to make the clinician's life easier, relatively, by helping to document the notes so they can provide better care to other patients, if that makes sense. So there's a shift in the way it is doing it. Some could argue that, well, actually, I use the AI scribe to make sure that all my documentation regarding your care is justified and entered accurately to make sure it's all okay. Does that sort of make sense? So patients do have some rights, but just bear in mind, yes, of course, you need to obtain the consent, but by all means, you can also refuse to do that because it'll be violating the principles of direct care, and it's unheard of. It's being unreasonable on that side. But good. Excellent. That's okay. So AI admin workflows specific. So I had one workflow I was going to cover really. So your call, we could either bear with me. Where is it? Sorry, bear with me. So we could either take a break now, or if you wanted to, I don't mind going through it all and finishing it earlier. So democratic country. Totally up to you. Or if you wanted a 5-minute break instead of a 15-minute break, that's also okay. What do you say?
Let's have a break.
Okay, have a break. Okay, no worries. So shall we get? So how long do you want it? 5-10 minutes, and then the only parts we have to cover now is the most important one is the governance. So I wanted to go through a one-worked example of document management workflow. So you feel confident and comfortable that any workflow you have, you can apply this and integrate your process in it, and how do you manage the risk as well, so we can go through. So that we can do that after break as well. So but I would need your thinking cap on for the next part. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 5 minutes would be great for me. I don't know others.
Sure, 5 minutes. Shall we do a 5-minute break and we'll crack on? We can finish early as well. Okay, cool. So shall we regroup at say 2:28, give or take? Yeah, in 5 minutes. Cool. All right. See you soon. Okay. Cool. Is everyone back? Or full house? Shall we kick off? So cool. Okay, so governance, boundaries, and escalation. So let's put it. So if I were to ask you or to map out your workflow, so remember Poloni's paradox, but this time we want to map out the entire flow well. Javed, let's go through your worked example. So are you in the same practice as Sheba, by the way, or?
No, I'm in the same practice as Dania. She just joined.
Oh, okay. Got it. Sorry, yeah, it does say different practice names. So I can really appreciate that, but that's fine. Okay, so do you want to map out your flow, about your reception flow?
In terms of.
I think we're getting echo. I think, have you got two things
I
on?
saw it. 1 second. Okay. Is it good now? Yes. No, it's not.
Yeah, I think you've got two things on. You've got a feedback channel coming most likely from
my manager was in it and she was in the room. Okay, she's gone now. Okay, what was the question?
Yeah, do you want to walk through your flow about how you're implementing your Emma AI, and so what will it do, what won't it do, and how are you going to record the risks, and how are you going to mitigate it? So let's start.
Let's go
through the flow. Start.
Okay, so what it will do, it will answer the telephone calls. It will take patient triage over the phone, or signpost patients, for example, to like pharmacy first. When it triages, it will take all the information. It will ask the questions that our triage system has. It will record the patient answers and send it to a dedicated inbox, which our triage team will be going through. That's the basis of it. In terms of like simple questions, if, for example, if a patient calls in regarding test results, it will signpost them and tell them, do you have the NHS app? They will say yes or no. They don't, it will walk them through it in terms of how to download it and how to see it. When it's triaging, if any of the symptoms it sees can be seen by the pharmacy, then it will offer the patient a pharmacy first referral. If the patient refuses, then it will be triaged normally. If a patient doesn't want to speak to the AI, he just has to ask the AI and it will be put through to our reception team.
Excellent. And what if the patient doesn't want to use the AI as a front-based tool? What would they have to do, or how would they?
So if they have an encounter with the AI and they let us know that they don't want to be part of the AI, have to speak with the AI at all, we have a VIP list which we can just add them onto, so they will bypass the AI and go straight to the reception team.
Perfect, great. So this is a map I had done some time ago, so if we just focus on the front part, right? So you have, if you think about it, you've got four modalities really. I've only included three here. You've got your telephone, your email, your face-to-face, and you'll have your walk-in, right? And so you're saying if the person can't use the AI, they would be coming at this point, and then they don't want to use the AI, they'll go straight to telephone for receptionists, right?
So the AI is only on telephone.
Only on telephone. Okay.
It's only on telephone. So when they call into the practice's main number, it will go to AI. If they don't want to speak to AI, then the AI telephone will be bypassed completely.
Got it. Okay, got it. Okay. And where do you think the risks lie?
For the patient?
Yeah, for the patient, for you, for the practice. So let's go for the patient then.
For example, one of the situations we thought of as a practice was, like we said, if somebody calls in for like shortness of breath or anything like that, the AI would let them know to call 999 or go to A&E. However, if the phone call was to be dropped abruptly in the middle of a call for whatever reason, that's one of the risks we could have. The fail-safe with that is there's a dedicated callback system via the AI, which any calls are dropped, they will call the patient back immediately. What we're trying to implement is if that AI fails to reach the patient again, we have a list of those patients that we can then call back ourselves or try to message.
Got it. Okay, that's really great. And so you very brilliantly or even talked about some of the mitigation as well with those particular risks as well. So that looks really great. And how are you recording this, like the errors and so forth? Have you got a system of doing this? So where are you keeping a log of these errors or problems?
So we have a dashboard that's been provided by the AI company. We have a safety hazard log in there.
Excellent.
We can record anything in there, flag it as green, amber, red based on the risk, and then we have like what method we're going to take to fix that problem.
Perfect. That sounds brilliant. Sounds excellent. I'm really pleased, Javed, that you've got this really robust system in play, which is fantastic. So if we go back here, what we're wanting to do is understand the workflow. This is a workflow I've done for clinical correspondence, by the way. And I'm sorry, I apologize. It looks a bit blurry here, doesn't it? Let me zoom in. Let me see if I can zoom in. No, it doesn't let me zoom in. Sorry. Is it can you sort of make it out? Or I mean, I can talk you through it. So one of the areas we really want to do was clinical letters. So there are companies like Better Letter and Anima as well that screens letters. And one of the areas we were looking at was, well, how do you risk assess a letter? And how do you manage the outcome of risk assessment of the letter? So the current process is a patient is seen in hospital, secretary would write a letter. They would then email it or send it via document. Do you guys use document at your place, Javed? Or
no, we don't use document.
So do you get your letters directly through your EMIS?
Yeah, straight to EMIS. Yep.
Straight to EMIS workflow. Okay, so forget that. Yeah, which is a great point, because I don't even know why document is around when EMIS can do this directly. So I put document/EMIS. Human administrator would do their checks. They would then file it into the medical record, and then it would be a human clinical checks needed. So that's to assess the risk and then decide what to do with the letter, whether we action it, whether we don't action it, or whether we action it, and so forth. The entire process can take somewhere about a couple of months, if you think about it. And that's mainly because of the delay in you receiving the letter rather than the actual work to do that letter. Does that sort of make sense? Or is that so far okay? Yeah, cool. And what we're trying to do is saying that how do you streamline that information? So very similarly what you said, Javed, is where you've mapped out that flow and you know exactly where the patient would encounter Emma AI, would then do the necessary flows within that work path. So the key thing I really wanted you to appreciate, and I think you have, and you demonstrated this really well, is that the clinician has to have full responsibility for all entries that go into the clinical record. So even the discussion with Emma AI that's happening, I assume they're recorded, and any notes that are generated would then have to be filed into the notes as a result of it. So we've got some basis of a log encounter that's taken place. You've already mentioned that you have a safety log, which is great, a hazard log, and that hazard log is a requirement for all organizations to have, and it's what we call DCB 0160 that you will need. So for any medical instrument or tool, mainly tool, any medical tool you use, you'll need to keep a hazard log off, so you can record the risks there. And the admin reception team is just being responsible for the accurate data entry and the appropriate document routing, as well as the escalation of any uncertainty, which again, I think you've got that in place, which is great. And I think it's important that you know the roles you all play and the clarity and that you're expected to do. So, of course, the clinician will have it all. But, of course, in admin reception, you'd never interpret clinical results, and no one would expect you to. But some people use auto-filing of labs. So in which case they're only a draft version, but you ultimately the clinician will always have to approve it. Same with diagnosis entries, will always be a clinician. And again, the AI tool can only suggest the codes or the clinical code that you can enter into it, but it would never do it for you. Same with admin as well, you'd always check. And so forth. So I think it's just bearing in mind the limitations your role has in interacting with the AI tool. And all I'm saying to you is basically that it can always promote to a human in the loop whether there's any escalation needed, but nothing more than that. And then sometimes I always say is know your escalation pathways. Who does it go to? So, and I think, again, Javed, you very eloquently positioned it as to whom you'd escalate the letters to accordingly, which is great. And is it urgent, not urgent, or is it clinical risk, or is it low clinical risk as well? So, and you've got pathway flows for that too, which is superb. Specific scenarios where you have uncertainty. Again, you have a workflow for that. Any suspected clinical risk. Anyone else using any other tools other than what Javed mentioned, the Emma AI? Has anyone used any or is using any other AI tool?
We are using Clinic as a triage tool.
Right. And how do you find it? How do you?
I mean, we have been using it for a while now, so yeah, pretty good. I think the only issue, which it's not really an issue, but I mean, it does kind of flags unnecessary clinics sometimes as urgent because of patients maybe not understanding, and they think that every box have to be completed, and so they put information in every box. Or for example, like bleeding from the nose, they would say just because there is a word bleeding, they would take it as an urgent and like flag it as an to review as urgent. But we have a clinician obviously reviewing it every day, and they can obviously see that shouldn't be an urgent appointment. It could be referred to the pharmacy or seen in a few days time, and they just put it in the accordingly to an inbox. So yeah, I mean, I mean, it's pretty good. I think that we can, because like we need to offer a patient something. We can't send the patient away, but at the end of the day, if not this tool, then we would be stuck. Because I mean, you can't send patient to the hospital. Some things can't be dealt with in the pharmacy, and it's and in this way we can always tell the patient, look, you can complete a form online, and it's going to be reviewed. And I think they feel reassured then, that the GP is going to review that and either book them an appointment, send them a prescription, and so on. So fingers crossed. We didn't have any complaints so far, and we have been using it for about 3 years now. So
great. Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. So you've got a lot of learning and data behind it as well. And it seems like you've just mentioned that you've got your workflows anyway. So human-led errors that would occur where the patient would say, I'll tick that bleeding box because it says bleeding, whereas bleeding on the nose and whatnot. So how I'm managing it. But does it ever generate errors that you've come across? So the machine itself, or i.e. the tool itself, starts generating any errors? Have you come across that?
No, I don't think we came across anything like that. No, I mean, obviously there is like thieving errors sometimes, that errors as such, but like things that could be improved, and they're quite quick on taking our feedback and trying to improve it. And you can set up I mean, people that are not familiar with Clinic, they probably don't know, but it's like a tile front page, and you can generate your tiles the way you want it. So we have tiles like with ongoing issue, long-term conditions, new issue, nurses appointments that or it could be smear tests or injections and stuff like this. So they should be really going to the correct boxes. So that's kind of good. But we didn't have any big issues since we started using it, to be honest. I think that we were very apprehensive because everybody else was using Accurix in our PCN, and we were the only practice that went with Clinic. But I think that we are pleased with that choice.
Yeah, understood. And that's fine because you're comfortable with it. You know the processes, you know where it can go wrong and how you would escalate and elevate it how appropriately. No, that's superb. The key things I really wanted to touch with. So do you keep a log as well, just like with Javed? You must also have a log of certain errors that occur with the device as well, or like when things go wrong, where do you keep that? Do you have a logbook?
I mean, there is like a portal that everything is recorded there on the portal, so we can always come back to the portal if we want to review that. And things are kept there. Yeah. So, but like I said, I mean, to be honest, fingers crossed, we didn't have any major issues yet, because it's probably because it's it's reviewed by a human, by a clinician, so this is just like a helping hand more than
exactly. So it's the human in the loop that's keeping it safe as well at all times, and that's absolutely the right thing to do, and I totally agree with that. No, that's fantastic. So I think by law every practice needs a DSPT, which I'm sure you all do have. You'd also need to do a data protection impact assessment for any tool you deploy, so whether it's Clinic or Javed, if it's Emma AI. Did they were they able to provide you with a template, or have you done one yourself?
They sent us one actually
as well. So great, fantastic. So you've all got a DPA. So these are your checklists, if you like, saying got, You'd certainly have this. So your data controller would be having this. You've already got the AI tools anyway for that process. But what I was trying to get at was the significant event audits as well. So just having that collective feedback. So if you keep a log of all of the things that go wrong, whether it's human, technical, or someone else dependent, and then discussing it in your governance meetings, that just helps to make sure that you're safe and you're clear on that regard. So so just bearing that in mind, and that's really it. The DCB 0129 is something that the companies would do, and the DCB 0160 is what you would do as an organization in keeping the logs. Are you familiar with those terms? Have you come across those, or are you?
I wasn't. I've only become knowledgeable of them since we started using Emma, because they provide us both of those with implementation guidance, which we had to follow.
Perfect. And that's exactly it. So you were then keeping a log of, so you would assess all the risks that the organization has developed. So Emma AI would have written all their risks in here, and you as an organization would then counter review it and then add your own comments to say, yes, satisfied with the mitigation, or this is what you would do as an organization to mitigate, and that's it. But good, it doesn't matter whether you did it late or not, as long as you know it now, that's all good. That's all good. So the DCB 0160, and likewise, Morgazata, any tool there is, even if it's AccuRx, they say that you need to keep a DCB 0160. Seems a bit overkill, but certainly for iTools, I think do it. But non-AI tools, I think it's good practice, and there's an expectation to do it. But sometimes, if you're lucky, the commissioners do it for you in the area, so you can use the same template overall. Good. Audit trails, we've already talked about. Incident reporting, we talked about. Audit cycles, you may want to look for how many errors or anomalies have occurred. Java, you might want to do this when you launch Emma AI to see how many mishaps or wrongful dispositions there will have been as a result of it. And of course, version controlling it. But this is more for the organization anyway, when they're doing that. Good. Excellent. I've got a bit of a quiz. Do you guys like quizzes, or is that so here's one I did earlier. I took my entire presentation, dumped it in this AI, and it's generated some quiz for me as a result of it. And I thought we could do some of them together and see how you all seem silence as a sense. I will say yes. So if you don't mind, I might just ask a few people to shout out their answers, what they think. So I'm not sure we've done the case scenario, so we can ignore this. So who wants to take this one? Someone who's been quiet. Is it Liza? Salim Kumar present? Oh, Olamide, you want to have a go? Come on, are you there? Anyone?
Okay, Jay, how about we go through all of the above for that question?
All of the above. Okay, so who wants to take a lead? Okay, let's make it interactive. God, you have no idea. 3 hours.
Yep.
Are we skipping question 1, yeah? Because we don't have the documentation.
Okay, we're skipping question 1. Let's go to question 2.
Yeah, I would go for
so what does safety netting specify? Yeah, what do you think? D, all of the above. What's your safety net? Sorry, was that someone else? Javed, was that you? Or
Yeah, I had the same answer.
Same, all of the above. Okay. D, Ashwara is also D. Okay, cool. So what's your safety netting? So agree symptoms to watch for, agreed. Time frame, yes. Reattendance instructions, yeah, I mean, it's good practice, but I'm not sure it will always be there, but totally agree. So yeah, good. Okay, so D, pretty good, isn't it, with the AI? Do you know how long it took me to generate these questions?
1 minute.
30 seconds.
Probably not even that, actually. It's probably faster than that. So yeah, it's pretty fast. Okay, cool. How about this one? No, I think that's a bit unfair. How about this one? What is the first step before using AI transcription in consultation? Oh, we talked about this a lot. So
A.
Okay.
Check AI tool approval. Or it has to be approved first before you use it.
I would say D, and then I'm also leaning on towards B as well, just before you actually submit it as well.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So so do I have a consensus? Which one are we going for?
D. I'll say.
Let's do D.
Yeah, D.
D. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we talked a lot about this. I don't know. I thought it would have been A, but I'll be curious. You could be right. So can be D, so I don't know.
I
I
mean,
would say
it is A, but like you knew D before that, right?
Yeah, true. But remember, we talked a lot about this, didn't we? We said that you got to get patient consent. So the point being is remember the argument is if I'm going to do something, do I need to get patient consent? And the thing is, if it's related to the direct care, then yes, you do. But if I didn't use an AI transcribe, can I still provide the patient direct care? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
So therefore, the AI tool, I need to get patient consent. But the reason why I asked you the question about EMIS, that if the patient says to you, I don't want you to use EMIS to record my notes, well, no, because now I cannot provide you direct care because every clinician uses EMIS. Does that make sense? And that's the fine distinction between why you are having to ask for consent for these things.
Let's say you're doing 2-week referral and then you don't put it in EMIS records. That's, you can't
There you go.
then.
Yeah. There you go.
Or any
So
other
you're in
referral for that
violation
matter.
of direct care as a result of it, which is why you need to. Whereas if you don't use the AI scribe, it doesn't really matter, really. And that's why you do need to obtain patient consent, if that makes sense. Good.
Brilliant.
Okay, that's good. How about this one? What type of AI is designed to perform one specific task? Remember that slide we had? I'm going to see. So I uploaded this. Actually took, believe it or not, 10 seconds to generate these questions from this list. And I've got the C. Great. Who said that? Javed, well done. Yes, I think it's C as well. Yeah. So remember we talked about narrow AI. So it's just designed. So your Emma AI is a form of narrow AI. Yeah. And cars, the autonomous cars that are driving and they use LiDAR technology, they're bridging between could it be general AI and narrow AI, but nothing's got to super AI yet. But yeah, fantastic. That's brilliant. So let me try another batch. So if I click on that button, by the way, this is a really good tool. So if you wanted to use it in your practices, it's free. I've not paid any money for this at all. And it's just generating the questions as I want. And remember, we talked about RAG technology earlier on. This is a good example of it because I uploaded the PDF document here and then told only from this PDF document, generate me questions. And that's what it's done. It's only looked at this and then generated the questions accordingly, if that makes sense. So this is another good example of RAG, by the way, RAG technology.
You didn't
Cool.
you didn't mention anything about HippoLabs. This is something that we are thinking of maybe trialing from April. I don't know if anybody is doing it because that's another AI tool. It's I mean it seems great, but I'm not too sure. Again,
AI. So what will they be doing for you?
so Hippo, I think they're called HippoLabs. So basically, they are reviewing our searches and contacting patients for us, call recall basically. But it's going to be mostly obviously messaging, emails, WhatsApp. I don't know what else is there. They will do it in circles basically 3 times. So let's say a text message in a couple of weeks, a WhatsApp message in a couple of weeks, an email, and then back again. And that's kind of 3 times recall for a smear test, baby EAMS, so on, NHS health checks, diabetic reviews. And what they do, they try to stream they try to consolidate basically, like let's say a patient is due for a diabetic review, asthma review, and B12 injection. Let's say if we have a list search as such, then they try to book it all together in one day in a similar slot, time slot, something like that. We just, I mean, it sounds brilliant, but I don't know how it's going to be in theory. So I was just wondering if anybody else used it yet, but.
So there are a few of those. So it's a bit like AbTrace, I think, isn't it?
I'm not too sure how this is again gonna, I mean, we can obviously advertise on our website that we are using tool like this, but how does it work in terms of consent? Because obviously they will have patients' details.
That's a fantastic point. So your privacy go on, Javed.
Emma does have something similar to that, which they are working on, which will be available soon. It's the same thing called recall system where you provide it a list and it will contact those patients and then give you an output based on that. So they're working on that as well.
So like outbound calls, isn't it? So they would just phone the patients and book them in. Yeah, that's got it. So both of those tools. So I think your one, Javed, use AI. I'm not sure, Malgorzata, whether they AI is using Hippo AI, but if they are saying they are using AI, then they must do. They must be
Yes,
using the
yes,
similar
definitely,
to
yeah.
what
Mhm.
it is AI. Fine. Okay, got it. So in that particular case, you're absolutely right. One thing you do need to do is all of your privacy policy on your website will need to be updated to let them know you're using these tools. We decided as a practice some time ago to just blanketly say any third-party providers will be used and left it at that, because we just couldn't keep updating based on every new tool we got. And so we ran it past our data protection officer, and they said that was reasonable to add. So if your privacy policy in your practice website doesn't have it, definitely make sure, just double check and make sure it has it. Even the third party or the name of the supplier. So in which case Hippo or Emma or whatever you choose. Once you've done that, you don't have to get permission from the, so this is a really good point. Do you need to get patient consent for using Hippo AI or Emma as well? But what do you think? How do you feel about this?
I mean, if you think about it, we were just talking about Scribe, and technically, if you have a patient in front of you, you will ask them their consent for using Scribe, which is AI. But, how do you do it? Obviously, if you are trying to outsource something because you don't have manpower to do it yourself, and, you cannot be contacting every patient just to ask them if, by the way, you may get a, text message from Hippo.
And that's a fantastic point and question. And I think in that regard, we don't. And they always say better communication, always get consent. But the reality is, as you correctly said, if I don't have the workforce to deliver this, then I will be harming patients, and inadvertently, of course. So I will be harming my patients because I can't call them for recall. So therefore, in order for you to continue providing direct care, I do need to use this tool. And so do you need the practices, or do you need the patient's permission for this? Not quite. But you do need to let them know that you will be using third-party providers like this, which is in your privacy policy, and you can signpost the patients to that. Yeah, go for it, Sheba.
This is actually quite an interesting topic. So if we were to say that patient did not have the rights per se to object to it because of direct care, it would imply that the organisation could continue using it as long as it's transparent, as you say, in a privacy notice. That could be applied in different scenarios in any AI in scenario, so to speak. So if consent is overridden already, could patients raise complaints? Do they have any legal rights to raise a concern, for example? Can a patient object?
They can. And so going back to that Scribe thing, let's say as an organization, let me pivot this the other way. Let me say as an organization, I've decided that as an organization, I want all my clinicians and all my administrative staff to use AI Scribe, because if they don't, we A, don't have the manpower, B, we can improve capacity for other patients to workflow. Then can I put this in the privacy notice and do this? The reason why at the moment it's difficult is because it's being done sort of like a piecemeal thing. So for example, the Hippo AI would just look at every patient that's there in your system that needs a recall. Emma will contact any patient that needs access to telephone. So as an organization, you've put forward that policy that I need to implement this in order to give my patients better access to healthcare, which is part of the direct care initiative. But where it's given patchy wise, then I think it becomes very difficult. If half your clinicians are using it, the other half are not, your admin are using it, but some admin are not, it becomes very difficult because technically speaking, your organization hasn't mandated this as a policy to be used. It's still good practice, of course, to always inform patients and let them know, and then let them raise concerns. So by all means they can. Do they have a lawful right to refuse and anger? I think without any merit in listening to the patient concerns, it's very hard to say yes they do, because it's been taken common practice. But this is where they will scrutinize you as an organization. Have you got a DCBO 160 toolkit there? What have you done to mitigate patient concerns about data breaches or data being sent away to other countries or whatever? And most of these organizations are ahead of the curve anyway, because they already know that if they're not GDPR compliant and they don't follow the NHS DSP toolkit, then they could be in tricky. And some of them are ISO 27001 registered as well. So they have to abide by those principles of keeping the data safe and secure in the country. So it is a really good point. And so in answer short, Sheba, patients do have the right to raise concern. Question is it justified and can it impact the direct care ability? And that's what comes down to as an organisation decision to make rather than an individual, if that makes sense.
Fantastic. That's really helpful. Thank you so much.
No, not at all, not at all. But a really good point. I really like these dilemmas because that's where you don't find the answers in textbooks. So, and it took me a long time to learn this myself. So, you know, that principle I was showing about earlier on, so we were developing this. So we had combed through this process here. We had gone through a process of reviewing 60,000 clinical letters that we collated over a 5-year period. And we wanted to analyze those letters to see how many were suitable for a clinician or how many were suitable for an administrator to file away an action or just file away. And we had to get permission from our data protection officer, who then reviewed our DPIA and our request and then decided that, yes, it is okay. So the patients that had died, remember the Google DeepMind and Royal Free Hospital dilemma? So we had to remove patients that were not our registered patients. So they were no longer our registered patients that had died, and remove that. But the remainder of the patients, we were able to say, well, in order for us to provide direct care to these patients, because it will free up clinician time, we have to do this analysis. So is it part research? Well, it wasn't part research because I just needed to know that do these patients that our administrators had already reviewed their clinical letters, did they do it safely is what I wanted. Now, no human can sit and review 60,000 letters. We don't have the funding and we certainly don't have the staff to do it either. So we were training a large language model to do this for us. And that's why we had to go down the whole legal consent basis, and it took quite some time. And then we gave it to our Northwest London, our DPO, and said, look, just to double make sure we are doing everything correct, is this fine? And they also reviewed it and they said, that's fine. And then they signed off on it. And so those 40,000 letters, we then trickled down to 9,000 letters. And then out of that, we took 10% as a sample size to analyze and see how the large language model did. And so that's been our journey with the consent process. Really knowing that rigorously and thoroughly will just make your life so much easier going forward. But good. Okay, excellent. Really well done. Where do the questions go? Should we do one more and then we could go case scenarios and see if we could then go through some hot topics that you might want to discuss. So who wants to take a stab at this one? Okay, go for it, Sheba. Thanks for volunteering. But go for it.
No worries. So from a perspective of putting information on the clinical system, I would say would have been the user specifically. So if you were referring to the clinician, it would be the clinician or the person inputting it as a human. But if you're talking about the data controller, it would be the organization that will be responsible.
Oh, you're very good, Sheba. Okay, what's your background?
I do governance and data protection in the background.
Fantastic. I love it when you said data controller, because I was thinking this answer is all wrong, because it should be the data controller is responsible for all the entries. So if you've got, part of my French, crap records, data controller is responsible. So very fantastic question. I assume they're going to say clinician here. So, but you're right. If it's the admin person who's done it, then they're responsible. And if it's the clinician, it'll be the clinician. The practice is in the eyes of HMRC, is a legal entity, but is not in Companies House because it's just a partnership usually. Most practices are GP partnerships, so it wouldn't be. AI tool, definitely not. It's just a mechanism of it. So they'll probably say clinician, but I totally agree. I think the answer is wrong here. I think it should be the data controller, but if it's full responsibility for entries. Yeah, good, excellent, well done. Okay, so now I know your background. That's how you managed to really get on top of the consent and whatnot. So very good. Well done. Well done. Okay, how about this one? What is the role? Let's take this one. Tanya, do you want to take a stab, or Mohammed? I don't know if you guys are here. See anything?
Maybe B and D, B and I would say B and D.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely provide overall education. What is the role of the admin reception team in AI-assisted workflows? Accurate data entry, definitely. I totally agree with you. B, agreed. Review clinical record. I reckon they've only got one answer for this one, though, but it could be D. Yeah, I agree. I probably might even see C as well, but yeah, but they probably say B. So yeah, there was only one answer there, but that's fine. But you're right, spot on. Cool, well done. Yes, absolutely. Brilliant. So let's go through the case scenarios, and then, as promised, I did say that you will all finish it on time, if not before. So let's see where are we at. Okay, so how to use these cases, so we can skip through that. So how about this one? So Mr. A, 64-year-old, attended with cough for 3 weeks. GP entry reads chest infection, antibiotics prescribed, no examination findings, no smoking history, no safety netting recorded or documented. 6 weeks later, Mr. A presents to A&E with hemoptysis. CT scan finds a 3 centimeter right upper lobe mass, later diagnosed with lung cancer. His record contains no documentation of the initial cough presentation. So what do you think? So what was missing from the initial documentation? The answers are here, by the way, but I'll pretend you're not looking at them because it's more supposed to be for discussion anyway. So what do you think?
He should be asked, first of all, obviously, if he's smoking. Potentially maybe a face-to-face consultation rather than telephone, so doctor could listen to the chest. Because if there is a mass, then potentially he will, the chest would be clear. I mean, I'm not a doctor, so I'm just assuming.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
I would just say, listen to the chest. If chest clear, then obviously, potentially other investigations such as blood test and maybe chest X-ray. And smoking, non-smoking, because that's important when there is an ongoing cough. And obviously safety netting, that's the most important, because even if the doctor thinks, that sounds like a chest infection, here you go, take this antibiotics, then there should be a safety netting of either telling the patient to come back if it's not clear within a week or two, or sending a task to admin staff to say, please book this patient for a review in X amount of time. So few things missing, really.
Yeah, agreed. I totally agree. So good documentation, record keeping, face-to-face, totally agree. And then future actions that they may want to do on this would have been a good step as well. So, for example, if they consider a chest X-ray or not, how we go on that. Good, excellent, well done. How about this one? Case 2. This one's an interesting one, actually. What might do is...
Looking at the context, it looks as if the AI has misinterpreted a lot of the information, particularly around the medication. So, for example, the patient isn't sure which medication, and it's indicating they've taken both, which is quite a concern just for starters. So as you mentioned, hallucination there.
So it's just decided to join up the two. It's decided to ignore the stop and just, agreed. Yeah. So, agreed.
And it says adherent to treatment be blood pressure at target, but it's not really, because she obviously stopped something that has been prescribed for her.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And it says no changes required, which is not true again, because obviously ramipril should be potentially taken off if it's a side effect, and something else should be given to patient because she was already on ramipril and amlodipine. Bisoprolol. And so, she can't just continue taking bisoprolol if ramipril was giving her side effects. It should be replaced with something else.
In addition, the patient to review in 12 months, if there was no safety netting, there's a huge concern for the patient. So for a good approach, put a safety net for the patient to be reviewed, because this patient could have slipped through the net. So
Agreed. Spot on. Absolutely. So it just goes to highlight the point about checking the notes again and then just correcting them as B as well, and the proper documentation. I totally agree, was the side effect recording it with the drug, and that's why the change was made. But this AI is a classical example where it's just jumbled it up, the words, and got confused, and then made an amendment. Good, excellent, yeah, well done, perfect. How about this one? So this is more related to the earlier workflow I was talking about. with clinical letters.
First question I have, should the receptionist even do that? Shouldn't it be summarized by a summarizer?
Yeah, true. But I think in the context, I think when I wrote it, I thought, you're right. It should have said note summarizer. But let's assume, for argument's sake, the receptionist is also a note summarizer in this regard.
Is this a genuine error from the AI whereby it was not reading the context of the letter? If that's the case, it would imply for every letter itself, and then you would have to assess the AI model.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a very fair point.
I mean, this kind of AI exists that actually review the documentation? Because I haven't heard, so I'm not sure what is it in this case. Is it like specific thing that is used or?
Yeah, so there's actually a few out there. There's Better Letter that's out there that I don't know if they signpost documentation. In fact, the one we're building is going through a Class 1 certification process, does this. So we've had to mitigate some of the risks associated with things like this. So, when you read a letter, one thing we didn't cover today, and that's probably for a future different course, is more about risk assessment. How do you assess risk? And so we had to do some work on looking at literature on how it would work for this particular thing as a clinical safety report we have to write up. But yeah, it can exist. There's no reason why it can't exist with recommendations. But here you could see that the
how
AI
come it wasn't flagged by AI? Because of the wording? Or I know that it's a scenario, but I mean that would be interesting to know,
Can happen. So our testing model actually got some wrong. Right. So yeah, I can talk you through more about how when we were testing what the problems were occurring and why they were occurring. Ashwari?
Yes, Ray. I would share one of my experience in this. I wouldn't say it's AI, but then as an admin, we do document certain files. So there was one document wherein in every document, it's a column from the hospital. They say GP to action. So that field was completely it says no action required. By end of the document, it says same like the GP needs to have a review. They need to do some sort of scan or the blood test request. So yeah, so I would say even if AI does give you the titles, I would say as a human or the person who if you reviews, I have to double check the whole document, and it's necessary to go through the document even if you get a heads up of what to do.
Correct. And going back to Margaret Sato, when you were saying that, how did the AI do this? Sometimes what it can do is it will, exactly as Ashwari mentioned, is just read this. So there may have been a sentence like this in that letter, and then somewhere later in the letter it would say do echo, just as Ashwari would mention as well. But the model has prioritized the no action bit and ignored what to do next. Does that sort of make sense? And we have seen models do that, because remember when I was talking about how models work by weightage? So the weight, the parameters. So the parameter, you have your input, your middle, and your outer. And that parameter, it would have weights to it. So we call it, the weights are basically the bias and the way the model is trained as well. And if the model is trained in such a way that it thinks that if it says the words no action required, it would give a higher weightage to that, as opposed to later on it says, please do echo in 4 weeks' time. It would ignore that. And so we've seen false negatives of that in our data set. So we use a confusion matrix, and in that confusion matrix, we weight down that how did the human do and how did the model do? And then we compare. In fact, we were awarded a grant on some GPs reviewing the clinical letters, mapping that, and then mapping our model against that, and to see how good were the two as well. So yeah. Oh, Ashwari, is that an old hand or a new hand? Or
sorry, an old one. Sorry.
That's all right. It's okay. So yeah, so it can happen. So who's to blame here? No, it's wrong to say who's to blame here. I don't like blaming. So what could have been done better? So do you think the AI model is at fault here, first of all?
Well, admin staff or whoever is reviewing it should really, review a letter themselves, I guess, before they trust blindly what AI says.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with her.
I mean, that's maybe is defeating the purpose a little bit because obviously, tools are used so to make our job easier, but at the end of the day, it's still just a tool, and we as humans, staff, are responsible for it. So
Yeah. No, agreed. And but there is a way you could improve this further, like you correctly say, is a written protocol is important. So if in your practice admin people are filing clinical letters, they should be working towards a protocol that they have. And so if you think about it, a policy in an organization is what the organization should do. Procedure is how to do it, and the protocol is the step-by-step instructions in how you're going to deliver it. So a bit of similarity with procedure and protocol, but the idea is that you would have a written protocol as to how you would manage that particular workflow safely in that regard. So I totally agree. So the AI's job is to be a guardian to help you, but don't over rely on it, because we need to know that it's not as accurate as we think it could be. So good, excellent. That's a really good one. And last one, I think it's the last one. Yeah, I think this was more aimed. I wasn't sure in this group if I was going to have a mix of clinicians as well. So I've deliberately put clinician and admin material as a mixture. So I'm okay. I can pass this. I think let's skip this because it's probably a bit too clinical, I think. Unless someone was eager to have a go at it, then fine. I'll go back.
yeah, I mean, I'm not a clinician, but I think that let's say it's just a telephone conversation with a receptionist, and then Miss D is saying, I have palpitations, and they see anxiety on her, and they decided actually, oh, don't worry, she called 5 times last week. At the end of the day, this should be assessed, and doctor shouldn't just assume. Nobody should assume just because patient have history of anxiety that it's not anything else.
Yeah, agreed. And detailing the documentation from the clinician aspect is most critical anyway, rather than the brief. So yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying as well.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think you mentioned in the beginning, that I would really like that there is some kind of template in terms of consultations, because we do have GPs who overwrite information, that the consultations are nice and long and detailed, and there are some that just use abbreviations and a few words for a consultation, and you're like, what a difference. It would be nice if and I think that potentially it would help with the previous case with a letter, if there would be uniformed letters and uniform consultations, that everybody kind of know what to expect and where things are put and how, and the same on the hospital. Sometimes 111 letters are like, you try to understand what it is about, and you just like can't.
No, I totally agree with you. No, that's a really good point. That is a really, really good point. Very well done. Cool, we're well done. So the case discussion. So ideally, what I just wanted to get back at is that even when you're documenting, what you've said to the patient and how it's been recorded is just important, and just the next steps for your colleague as well. And how you'd escalate and how you document your reasoning is entirely fine. So using AI tools to do that is absolutely fine. I know some people use ChatGPT to polish up their notes. So they'll write something, then put it into ChatGPT, polish it, copy and paste it into it. But when you copy and paste it, just read through it again to make sure it's captured the entire essence of that consultation or the conversation you've had with the patient, is the only thing I would say. Great. So I'll just cover up. I think that's more or less it. Were there anyone really thought, okay, you haven't really addressed my question, and that you've got a burning desire you want to ask now, and then I could try to summarize, or you've got some time, we can go through it now, or shall I just carry on? Yeah, okay. If you're okay with that, then I'll carry on. But if you do, then feel free to stop me and we can go over any other material. So, of course, the 7 key take-home messages, if anything you've learned from today, just remember that even clinical records are an important part of the tool because it puts the patient's event transcribed into the medical notes for ongoing care. Making sure it's contemporary, is clear and accurate is key. AI is just a tool, it's not a clinician, which I know you all know. So how you use it is entirely up to you. Specific safety netting is non-negotiable, of course, and this is only applicable when you're dealing with patients on the telephone and they're saying, I've got chest pain. How do you record that? Do you have a protocol in the practice? It would be good if you do. And say, well, chest pain, patient was advised to call 999. Patient said they will do so. Record that in the notes. That's you safety netted, or you can offer to phone the ambulance on behalf of the patient and record if you have the time to do that. Know your roles and your escalation routes. We've already covered that. Governance is everything. The DPIA, we've covered DCPA 160 for you as an organization and you using a tool, and have a way of capturing any incident reportings. And they're not solely the responsibility of the practice managers, it's everyone. So if you can, that'd be great. And then, of course, reporting the errors, which most suppliers will have their own mechanism of capturing it. And the practical do and don't list, I mean, everything's straightforward. I'm not going to go into this too much detail. Again, you'll have the slides anyway. The future outlook, I think as time goes on, you'll see the AI is becoming more and more advanced with time. And so I think for you to just get familiar with it now is good practice, because I think it will be eventually heavily integrated into the clinical records even more so, and how you use it. So be good. And what does it mean for your practice team? Of course, the governance is most critical and key in all of this. So just make sure you're you know your boundaries and your framework for which you can operate the AI tools on. And key references are just, if you wanted to, on the regulatory and compliance, you can actually just put these in Google and it will come up and explain to you what they are and how to use it. So this will be a really good useful exercise, and the one in the dark brown box. And then if you wanted some further information, then you can use the clinical safety and documentation angle as well on that side. So good. And I think I think you guys are really good. I think you're really ahead of the curve and you know what you're doing. I think it's just having that framework to do it. So I'm not going to teach you how to suck eggs. You know how to do this really well already because you've been using other forms of tools for some time. And like I say, the AI is just another tool, but it has limitations. It has risks, and how you're managing those risks is most critical on that as well. So that's it really on that side. I think this is the last slide. Any questions at all? Anything anyone would like to ask me, or anything before we finish?
Sorry, you did say that the slides are going to be shared, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I'm going
Correct.
to email this to Jeshni, and then she'll be, I think, emailing it out to the rest of the team, is my understanding. I think I've got someone from Belmar, but yeah, definitely slides are coming your way. Ashwari, question?
Yes, Jay, I have two questions in regards to the AI taking the calls. As Javed said, is going to implement that. So the question one is that can AI be as empathetic as a human while taking the calls from the patient? For example, a distressed patient. Can AI respond as similar to as a human would do? And and the second question is that would really affect the employment, and how are we going to address that if AI is going to take over the employment in terms of the reception or taking calls of side, like how are we going to address that issue?
Okay, that's a fantastic question. So the first part, your question was, can AI be empathic? Yes and no. The AI will do whatever you tell it to do. And you have to be very careful, because the AI is known to want you to agree with you, whatever you say. So the prompt that you give the AI has got to be critical. And it has to be very much more like, if you say to the AI, behave as a very caring, nurturing father who's looking after their children, and they behave this way, then do this. That's exactly how the AI would behave. So it would learn what the attributes are of these potential people. And one of the questions you might ask is, how does it know to do that? Well, what it does is it's been trained on a large data set on the internet. Most of the information that's been fed into it is from blog sites like Reddit and various other websites, and how people respond, queue, talk. And then that's how it tries to emulate that as well. We had applied for a grant for Smart Call, which was basically an AI generated, very similar to Emma, if you like. And we wanted it to appreciate the nuances in the language, the tone, the rhythm, and so forth. And you can do those attributes. So they have. And a very good example is music. So when you go on Spotify, it knows what kind of music you like based on the sequence of algorithm patterns that you've heard a lot. And it's the same, you can emulate that in the model. So you can, and I think we're probably a little bit closer there, but still some way to go. To answer your second question, jobs, I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think you're pretty safe here because the AI is actually pretty crap at the moment, as in relatively crap, because they can't ever replace a human, because what you have are more the empathy. And you know that, remember that triangle I showed, narrow AI, and then you had the super AI at the top. You are functioning at the super AI level, okay? And we're very far away from that at the moment. How do you emulate? How do you think? How do you feel? When do you know what to say? Remember, the way the LLMs are working is they generate information based on what is being fed, but it doesn't know, it can't sense the audience. Does that make sense? So you can sense when someone's distressed, but the AI can't sense that. It doesn't know what distress is. It has to be prompted to be distressed or to understand that, be in this tone. So therefore, I think your jobs are also very safe, at least for the next 5-10 years anyway. So I wouldn't worry about too much, and I'm sure even thereafter. And don't forget, history teaches you a lesson. Before the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, everyone thought when tractors and agricultural machinery was coming, farmers will be out of a job. Has that happened?
No, yeah.
So and that's the Ludwigs. The Ludwigs thought that, oh no, it will be chaos. We won't have any jobs. We'll be unemployed, and what's going to happen to us? But the reality is, it doesn't. You just find new work skill sets. But I tell you something: if you want to be really good at your job and be competitive for your salaries and whatnot, those who use AI are far more likely to be successful than those who don't. So that's why I would strongly encourage you to start using it in your day-to-day practice, because you'll see and appreciate the benefits of it as well as the limitations. No.
So much, Jay, for answering the questions. Appreciate it.
No, that's okay. I'm afraid it's a bit of a long-winded answer, but hopefully you'll be okay on that side. Any other questions or anything else?
No, I just wanted to say a huge thank you for today. It's been extremely educational, really informative. So thank you very much.
Oh, no, thank you. I appreciate that feedback, because I wasn't quite sure the audience and the level of knowledge as well, because you guys are very far ahead of the curve. So you had a lot of knowledge, which made it even more interesting and passionate to talk about it, because I feel very passionate about it, because we're all in a job of caring, and you want to do the best for your patients. And if I can help in any way for you to do the better for your patients, then by all means, good. Thank you very much for your time. In that case, if no one else has any questions, I will let you enjoy. But I'm happy to stay back as well. So if anyone wants to stay back, that's also cool as well. So, but if you all want to go, that's all good too.
Thank you.
No worries. Take care. All right. Enjoy your evening. Take care.
Thank you,
Bye.
Jay. Thank you.